So we've got, obviously, you can see myself and Reuben are presenting today. So my name's Katie, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently the chair of the 2023 National Youth Forum. I was on the National Youth Forum last year representing the West Midlands. I've been in St John for 13 years, and no, almost 13 years, 12 and a half years, and have been involved with youth forums for the last kind of 3 years. If I look like I'm moving around quite a lot tonight, I am. I'm stood up. My Teams isn't really working, so we're makeshifting, but it means I am stood up. So if I seem to be having a little boogie, I probably am. But don't worry, I am completely fixed on what we're doing. Reuben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, I'm Reuben, he, him, and I'm the chair of the North East Regional Youth Forum for 2023. And so I also sit on the National Youth Forum representing the North East. I've been on youth forums for probably the last year and a bit now in some shape or form. And I've been in St John Ambulance for 5 years in September. And unlike Katie, I am very much sat down.
Awesome. So we are also joined by a number of adults today. So we've got Emma Jane, the National Youth Participation Lead, sitting in the background, answering any questions that you've got that you might email through to us. And as you can see from some of our introductions, we've also got a lot of adults from across the East Midlands who are here just to find out just as much information about us or the young people on the call. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute, which is probably a delight to your ears already. And I'm going to let Reuben explain what Youth Voice is, basically. Oh, no, actually, no. I'm doing what Youth Voice is. So, what is Youth Voice, if you'd like to skip across, Reuben? So Youth Voice means a society where young people are heard. So young people being able to share what they think and then being listened. A society where young people can bring about change. So what we say is actually listened to, and where what we say is considered when decisions are made. So our opinions are counted and can bring around change in the long run. And Youth Voice is where young people are involved from the start. So it doesn't mean, I'm not going to explain what it doesn't mean because Reuben's going to do that next, but it basically means young people involved from the start of a program, from kind of a project or the start of whatever's happening, all the way until the end of it, where it's planned, where it's delivered, where it's executed, and they're involved from the start to the finish, which is really good. But Youth Voice requires young people to have a safe space where they feel listened to and supported so they can speak up safely. And they're two really important things that we need for Youth Voice to be successful. Reuben, over to you.
So what people sometimes think Youth Voice is young people being at an event, having one cadet at the table for a meeting, and this is just not true at all. If a cadet is in a meeting, it's very much that they should be contributing to that meeting. Asking the Cadet of the Year to represent all cadets, because whilst the cadets of the year are very important and they've done a very good job to get where they are, they don't represent every single cadet in their district, region, or in the country. And consulting with youth once, I meant just always using that, because you may consult with one set of young people at one time, but when you talk to a different set of young people at a little later date, they could tell you completely different things. Youth Voice means engaging with a diverse range of young people over a sustained period of time, listening to them and making appropriate changes for the betterment of the organisation.
Awesome. So Reuben, if you can just leave it there before you click on to the next thing. We're going to talk about the different ways St John promotes Youth Voice now. So there's 5 main ways that Youth Voice is promoted in St John, one of which being people networks. So I'm going to explain a bit about people networks, and I'm going to see if anyone knows any of the other ways that Youth Voice is promoted. So people networks are groups of people within St John, so they're young people and adults, and they're a safe space for people to share, learn and educate others. There's 6 people networks in St John: the Armed Forces Network, the Multicultural Network, the Disability and Accessibility Network, the Pride Network, the Women's and Families Network, and the Carers Network. So those 6 networks are made up of people who belong to those categories and allies to those categories. And basically they look at things like policies, they look at making decisions and running projects basically around that point so that change can happen, and young people can be involved in any of the 6 people networks. So does anyone know any of the other kind of areas that Youth Voice is promoted in St John? If you've got any ideas, if you'd like to unmute and shout out at us or write in the chat, you're more than welcome to. Okay, I think we'll skip on to the next one, Reuben, so we can get moving a little bit. So the next way that St John promotes Youth Voice is the International Youth Advisory Network. So the International Youth Advisory Network is a platform where young people across the whole of basically the whole world can come together and support and improve the St John youth programmes. Each priory has an ambassador that sits on the network. So that is an ambassador for England and the islands, Australia, New Zealand, Wales, Hong Kong, South Africa, and many, many more. In England and the Isles, our international youth ambassador is Chloe Ann, who's a young person from the West Midlands in Staffordshire, Shropshire, and Wolverhampton. But basically, she represents St John, England, and the islands on that national network to promote change in the way that St John Youth works across the world. We haven't had any more ideas in the chat, so I think we'll move on to the next one. And the next way that Youth Voice is promoted in St John is through functional youth reps. So steering groups kind of where these functional youth reps sit, specifically the Youth Operations Steering Group. And a steering group is a place that provides a safe place for young people who are passionate about a certain topic to discuss the topic with others who share the same passion, so that decisions can be made, so they can feed into policies and procedures. And that's basically what a steering group does. So in the youth operations world, which is basically young people accessing things like events, things like nighttime economy and logistics and everything basically to do with providing a first aid or some kind of service to the community, there's functional youth reps. So we have Ben Neal, who's a cadet from the East Midlands, does EPRR, which is something along the lines of planning for an emergency. We've got Kira, who is the ambulance operations functional youth rep. We've got we've got Ben, who does kind of events, and then we've also got Callum and Libin, who are not strictly functional youth reps, but they are the chairs, or the co-chairs I should say, of the youth operations delivery steering group. And that team of young people work together, and hopefully that team of young people will expand, but to share Youth Voice in kind of really big meetings. So every functional youth rep represents their function at their the big kind of adult meetings to give young people a voice in those situations. So, Reuben, have we got the next one? Awesome. So our next way that Youth Voice is promoted in St John is through our young trustee. So St John, specifically England and the Isles, has a young trustee who's Mariam. Mariam is a young person who sits in the team who run the charity basically from the top. They have meetings where they discuss everything from people to strategy to finance to governance and everything in between. So Mariam's a young person who sits on this quite powerful team who basically decide what we do a lot of the time. And then our last way that Youth Voice is promoted in St John is the reason why everyone's here today, which is youth forums. And I'm going to stop talking about Youth Voice for a minute and let Reuben discuss this more.
Hang on. So, what is a youth forum? So, do you all just want to put down in the chat what you think a youth forum is? Seeing that we've got a place for cadets to share ideas. Have we got any more ideas on what a youth forum is? Oh,
I think we've got a couple of people typing Reuben.
yeah.
So give a minute.
Can see a couple of good ideas. Oh, Tracy, that is a very detailed description of what a youth forum is. Right.
Anybody think I've been listening?
I've got the SJA definition here, which youth forums are platforms for young people in St John to have their say on what matters to them and to create opportunities for others. And our youth forums exist at 3 levels, which are our district youth forums. So for me, that would be the South and West Yorkshire District Youth Forum. Our regional youth forums, which is, for example, the North East, and the National Youth Forum, which is for England and the islands. So each youth forum is run by a youth chair and vice chair with support from a designated youth forum adult. And your district youth forums are made up of predominantly elected reps who are discussing these important youth matters, but also the relative cadets of the years for the district or the region. And on the National Youth Forum, we have the National Cadets of the Years for the Commanderies and England sitting on there as well. So the youth forums deliver youth-focused events and consult on relevant projects and policy within St John. I'm going to hand back over to you, Katie.
Awesome. So I'm going to spend a bit of time now breaking down the 3 levels of youth forums, starting with a district youth forum. So a district youth forums as a whole are quite new. They kind of first started popping around during 2020 when we were all online and it was a lot easier to get stuff done like youth forums. We'd love for district youth forums to be much more common in the next kind of year or so, with every district having a youth forum. Like Reuben said, a district youth forum is made up of an elected rep from each unit and the district cadet of the year, and also the district rep on the regional youth forum. So depending on how big your district is dependent on how big the district youth forum is. District youth forums often work on very local led projects, consult with cadets in their units in order to feed up to the district youth forum, hopefully the regional youth forum. So regional youth forums. Regional youth forums are basically a district youth forum, but a little bit bigger. So on a regional youth forum, you have an elected rep for each region and the district cadet of the year. So these people work together to work on things at a regional level. So they might be asked to take part in consultations for policies maybe relating to youth forum guidance. They may do some kind of regional led projects. And each regional youth forum has an elected chair who sits, they run the meetings, they might help to write the agendas alongside their vice chair, and they also sit on the National Youth Forum. So the National Youth Forum kind of acts a little bit like a commissioning body over the other 2 types of youth forums, kind of not taking a lead, but kind of overseeing what everyone else does in a way. We take a strategic view over youth forums as a whole and youth in St John, looking more a little bit at documents and running national led projects. So we've got a couple of things that we'd like to do this year, for example, but we also need to make sure we look at the guidance for how youth forums run so we can make it better for next year and the year after and so on. The National Youth Forum is a really, really new concept. So we started as a forum in April 2022. So we've only been running about not even a year and a half yet, and we've come on a really long way, and hopefully it's just going to get better. So before we move on and look at the National Youth Forum a little bit more, I've said that these 3 types of youth forum are all really, really similar, and they all work together in a way to make sure that every young person has a voice that's heard. So the idea of how youth forums work is the National Youth Forum should be able to say something or say we're looking at this, and then all of the reps will take it down to the Regional Youth Forum. The Regional Youth Forum will then have a discussion about it, but they'll go, okay, we all need to go and have a discussion about this at our district youth forum. And then at our district youth forums, we should all be going, okay, we need to go and have a discussion about this at our units. So a cadet at a unit has the same opportunity to have their voice heard and to share their opinions as a cadet who sits on the National Youth Forum. And then just as those messages came down all the youth forum structures, they should then go all the way back up. So what a young person says at a unit might get spoken about at a district youth forum or a regional youth forum or even at the National Youth Forum. Yeah, so youth forums all work together to ensure that every young person in St John has their voice heard. So Reuben, if you click onto the next slide, we're going to have a bit of an overview of the National Youth Forum, because kind of in the next month or so, we'd like to get a National Youth Forum representative from the East Midlands. So it's going to be quite nice to know what the National Youth Forum actually is. So first of all, who's on the National Youth Forum? The National Youth Forum is made up of the Regional Youth Forum chairs, the vice chair and the chair of the National Youth Forum, so that's myself and Libin. You've got every Regional Youth Forum has a chair, or if they don't quite have a Regional Youth Forum yet, we have a rep from that region who's going to kind of represent all of the young people in that area. That's from all 8 English regions and the 4 commanderies, which is kind of the islands. We have a representative from all of the other programmes. So NHS cadets have a rep, young responders have a rep, and student volunteering have a rep. We also have the National Cadet of the Year and the Commander's Cadet of the Year. So they're not necessarily voted onto the National Youth Forum like everyone else is, but through their role as a Cadet of the Year, they do get a place. We also have the International Youth Ambassador and the Young Trustee get a role on the National Youth Forum, but they're non-voting representatives. So they kind of help, they come and help advise, but they don't actually have a vote when it comes to making decisions. The National Youth Forum aims to ensure that every young person across the country, so whether they are a 5-year-old badger or they're a 25-year-old student volunteer, has a place where they're represented, their voice can be heard, and basically so that we can get youth voice as a really, really widespread knowledge across the country. Very, very soon, there's going to be an opportunity for an East Midlands cadet to join the National Youth Forum to ensure that every region is equally represented and so that we can hear the voices of young people in the East Midlands too. Over to you, Reuben.
So, why are youth forums important? So, in terms of benefits to St John, they give youth perspectives to inform the organisational thinking for a better youth experience in all of our programmes. Youth forums advocate for change, improving youth programmes, events and resources. And it allows the organisation to act on youth feedback, which creates a more resilient, accessible and interesting youth offer across St John. You can see there we have a QR code. So if you want to get that up, it'll take you to a Teams form, Microsoft Office form. And if you want to put your ideas in for benefits that young people get out of youth forums, and we'll go through them in a couple of minutes' time.
So Reuben, when everyone's kind of filling out the form for us, what would you say is the biggest thing that you've benefited from being on a regional youth forum?
So personally, I think I'd say my biggest benefit has been all of the amazing young people I've met. So from doing all the work on the North East Regional Youth Forum, I've met some amazing people who I would have never met before from different districts all across the North East. And on the National Youth Forum, again, I've met so many different amazing people from every single stretch of the country. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago where we got to know each other, and it's amazing how much some of us have in common, but some of the differences we have in interests. So that's been really nice to see.
Awesome. I'd say the biggest thing that I've got from working on a youth forum as an individual is the amount of kind of teamwork and organisation you've got to do, because I've been on a youth forum for literally the past 3 years, so I've done quite a lot on youth forums, and the difference between doing kind of a project that's very much a personal based project. So I ran a project across the West Midlands last year called Cadets Through Time, which was basically something that I did pretty much on my own, and it ran for the whole year. So being very strict in making sure I sat down and did it so that it was out on time made me kind of work and organise. But also running things like National Youth Conference last year, I had to work in a team with the whole of the rest of the National Youth Forum and some of the guest presenters we had coming in to be able to pull it off. So I think kind of those kind of key life skills that you need really develop those from being on a youth forum. Hopefully we'll get some responses coming through soon. Or we'll give it another minute or two, and then I'll share some of the results in the chat. So if I start to read out some of the responses that we've got for how can young people who are on a youth forum benefit, we've got getting confidence to talk to a lot of people and network with others from all across the country, develop transferable skills like communication and teamwork, have the chance to feel like their voice is heard and make changes, improve their teamwork and problem solving skills, having kind of a support system so they know where they need to go to if they need any help or support, leadership, public speaking, feeling soon, boosting people's confidence, developing people skills. Get some more up. From how can young youth forums benefit all young people in St John, we've got ideas can be shared to help everyone, cadets have the opportunity to network, takes groups of similar opinions and helps them push ideas out to St John Ambulance units across the district, regions and nation, to meet others and develop new skill sets. Information can be shared at a faster rate, to love that one. Expressing their own opinions on what they think and why. Awareness, acceptance, exposure, knowledge. Awesome. I think we've got some really, really good ideas there. I'd like to just add a couple of things. So from youth forums being there as a whole, all young people benefit because we've got one of the key things already, that ideas and messages can be passed down to a unit level really, really easily and really quickly. But also, if we've got young people on youth forums, that means that some of our regional or our national leaders are consulting with those youth forums. So young people get a chance to have their voice heard at a national level, basically. And also, youth forums are quite often involved in writing things, looking at things like policies relating to young people. So by having that, it means our young people today can have a say in what happens within youth in the organisation. So then hopefully it makes it a little bit more interesting and more engaging for the future, so that we can improve our programmes more. Reuben, I know when everyone was filling out the form, we were touching on a couple of things that we benefited from St John Youth Forums for. Can you think of any others that we haven't said?
So, whoa. Let me have a think.
I think we've had things like teamwork and communication and leadership. I think a big one for me is the amount of friends I've made from being on a youth forum. So young people who are on a youth forum benefit from making friends. They benefit from having a leadership responsibility. They know that they need to communicate with the rest of the cadets in their units, their districts, their regions, to be able to share on the youth forums as best as they can do. Any ideas, Reuben?
You get some great opportunities as well. So on the National Youth Forum, we have residentials as well. So we have a National Youth Forum residential in September, which I'm really looking forward to, where you get to meet everyone in person and you have a day of sitting down and getting everything done. But youth forums are so much more than just sitting down and getting all of your work done. You have such a great time. We have lots of fun.
Definitely. So, Reuben, would you like to go through some of the support available for young people on youth forums?
So, if you end up sitting on a youth forum, there's lots of support which is available to you to help you feel confident in sitting on a youth forum or potentially running a youth forum. And there's lots of support that will help you enjoy your youth forum experience. So we have our youth forum team site. So each youth forum has a team site where you can talk to the other reps about your different youth forum work, ask for advice, see what's working for some people and see what isn't working. Each youth forum rep is offered 6 training sessions per year, which are organised by the youth participation team, and they're really great. So we had one a couple of weeks ago, which was to do with EDI, which was really good, enjoyable one. And you get mentorship opportunities as well. So talking to people who have been in roles that you've been in, so you can get lots of advice from them, and they can talk you through and teach you through how to do some of the more difficult things. And you get lots of advice from your youth forum facilitator as well. So your youth forum facilitators are the adults who work very closely with the chair and vice chair, sort of write the agendas and get the presentations done, set your project deadlines and that kind of thing. And they're very helpful. You can always turn to them if you ever need some advice or help. And of course, all the amazing friends you can meet through the youth forum. You can talk to them at any time, as long as it's in reasonable hours and you're not waking anyone up, and just talk to them about their experiences, and you can connect on a bit of a deeper level.
Awesome. So if you scoot back a minute, Reuben, with all of the youth forum training that's provided, youth forum reps don't have to attend that. It's all something that's optional. So we had the EDI training, which is all about equality, diversity and inclusion within St John, making sure that people are treated fairly so they can achieve as much as we can do, no matter what our needs are. If we've got a disability that might mean we struggle to do something, making sure that we've got equal opportunity to still achieve. So we had a hour and a half youth forum session all about that a couple of weeks ago, but there's youth forum sessions about every 2 months, where we have a different topic and we basically learn about it. They're not mandatory, but they're a really cool thing to go to if you can, because you will learn a lot and it will help you develop as a youth forum representative. So that's some of the support available for youth forums. But we have just spoken at you for 30 minutes, and you're probably thinking a little bit, how does this relate to the West Midlands? So if Reuben, if you scoot along a minute, this is kind of our timeline of what we think we're going to do. So obviously we've got tonight. Tonight's the 10th of July, and we've got our youth forum information evening across the East Midlands. Throughout August and September, August, early September, we'll be holding elections within the East Midlands to get an MYF representative, so a young person, to represent the East Midlands on the National Youth Forum for the next year. The 15th to the 17th of September, that young person who's elected will be invited to the National Youth Forum residential, where they'll join all the rest of the National Youth Forum in a 3-day meeting, basically to discuss a load of different things, from youth forum guidance to receiving youth forum training to elections for the following year, and literally everything in between. We'll be having a very fun-filled weekend, but getting lots of youth forum related work done. And then in the future, we'll be looking at establishing a regional youth forum within the East Midlands and district youth forums in all 4 of the regions, so Derbyshire, Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire and Rutland and Northamptonshire. So that is kind of our plan about youth forums, about youth voice within the region. That is all that we've got to say. But if you have any questions, please let us know by messaging in the chat now. Okay, so when we're just waiting for anyone to type any last minute questions into the chat, just on kind of our schedule of our plan, in the next month, we'd really like to get one National Youth Forum rep from the East Midlands to represent young people on the National Youth Forum. Everything else will fall into place when we have kind of adult facilitators in the space to be able to provide more youth voice opportunities within the region. But getting someone on the National Youth Forum is going to be our first kind of stepping stone to get youth voice across the East Midlands. Awesome. So I've just seen your question about district youth forums being mandatory in the future. So district youth forums aren't mandatory, but we really encourage you to get them in, to get them started. District youth forums are a really cool thing to do. It means that young people from across every unit has the opportunity to get involved with youth voice, to be able to be represented, to be able to benefit from building their skills, building their leadership, their communication. So we highly recommend that all districts have a district youth forum. We understand that that's not going to happen overnight, but we'd really encourage you to set up a district youth forum if you're able to. Awesome. So nothing kind of what we've said in the last kind of 35-40 minutes is something that you have to do. We're not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. We're here to help advise you and help support young people across the East Midlands and across the whole country have their voice heard and to be kind of represented equally in these spaces. So anything that kind of we've suggested today is not necessarily something you have to do, but it will be beneficial in the long run if we kind of get some of these things involved and up and running across the region. Awesome. So Reuben, obviously we are going to be opening up National Youth Forum elections soon. When you applied to be on the Regional Youth Forum, what did you have to submit to be able to apply, like a manifesto, for example?
So for the regional youth forum, I've got to remember back to about last October now, but what I did was I submitted a Word document and I had to write 200 words. I had to talk a little bit about myself and how long I have been in St John Ambulance for, but I also had to talk about what previous experiences I had had with youth forums. Now, at the time, I sat on the South and West Yorkshire District Youth Forum, so I spoke about that a little bit. But I also spoke about what I wanted to gain from the youth forum and what I thought I would bring to the youth forum and how I felt I could potentially help the youth forum.
Awesome. So if you decide to apply to be on the National Youth Forum, we'd be looking for you to submit either a 200-word Word document, a 5-slide PowerPoint presentation with a minimum font size of font 24, a 90-second video or a 90-second voice recording of basically why you think you should join the National Youth Forum, a little bit about you, what skills you'd bring to the National Youth Forum, and then those will be shared with other cadets. And they'll be able to vote for which one they like, which person they think should be on the National Youth Forum. So just that's kind of the process for applying onto the National Youth Forum. And so on any regional district youth forum, you should submit a manifesto and then they'll get voted for. So that's just something to consider when you're thinking about applying. Cool. Does anyone else have any questions? Awesome. We're glad that it's been useful for you, Nikki. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up. But before we do wrap it up, Reuben, can you leave us on a sentence summing up why youth forums and youth voice is important?
So for me, youth forums and youth voice are important because it gives the chance for the what I would describe the scaffolding of St John, which is youth, to have their voice heard, not just in their unit or their district, but on a regional and national scale. And for the people up at the top to hear what so many important young people think about our amazing organisation.
Awesome. Thank you, Reuben. So this recording will be available on YouTube if you'd like to point any of your young people, any of your friends, any other adults in St John towards this recording very shortly. If you have any questions that you suddenly think of as soon as you leave, which is normally the way that things happen, feel free to email youthparticipation@sja.org.uk and we'll get an answer to you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we hope you have a lovely evening, and we look forward to having a East Midlands cadet on the National Youth Forum soon.